Gate 5 and the 5th gene key. So Gate 5 is patterns in human design. Its I Ching is waiting. Its astrology is Sagittarius. Its biology is ovaries and testes. Gate 5 is deeply rhythmic. When you have this energy, it is vital that you maintain a routine in order to feel effective and good. You may find that if your routine gets interrupted, you have a hard time getting your day going. If you are a generator with this gate, you will respond to opportunities for work and sex that are rhythmic. Gate 5 likes routine, even intimacy in work that has a pattern, consistency, and rhythm. So let's go to Gate 5, or the fifth, to the 5th gene key in the gene keys, and that is the ending of time. Programming partner, the 35th gene key. Code honoring the Ring of Light, 6, 9, 11, and 26. Physiology, sacral plexus. Amino acid, threonine. The 5th shadow, impatience. The new genetic code. It is the 5th gene key that really forms the backbone of the 64 gene keys. Containing all the codes and patterns of life, the 5th gene key represents the great digital library of consciousness and form. These codes, like coiled and concealed within every single living cell, wound into the famous helical patterns of your DNA. The 5th gene key is also one of those gene keys that is found in all life forms. Thank you so much for the like. Since it alone maintains the very rhythmical patterns that allow an organism to stabilize within its particular environment. Furthermore, the 5th gene key is a great mystical chess piece within the genome, since it also unites all these separate organisms into one great universal rhythm, the pulse of life. Because the 5th gene key binds all living forms through these universal patterns, at its lower frequencies, it tends to display a deep distrust of life. Just turning my light on real quick. This manifests in human beings through the 5th shadow of impatience. We know that all human beings carry inside themselves a deeply ingrained fear of death. What you may not realize is that there are many layers around this fear. At the level of your personality, there is your outer fear, the prime fear pattern you absorb through the events of your childhood. This personal fear in turn gives way to the great collective fears. For example, the fear of change. At the deepest level, however, at the very precipice of awareness, lie the most ancient human fears, and this 5th shadow represents them. These ancient collective fears stem from one prime source, the fear that there is no underlying order to the universe. If the frequency of your genetics is turned into this fear, no matter what you do to try to bring a sense of stability to your life, your body itself will never feel safe. This is in fact the normal state of consciousness of the mass of humanity. Within the 5th gene key lies the great secret of the timing of life. This gene key is about trusting or not trusting universal rhythm and natural timing. It sets the rhythms of the seasons, it fixes the timing of all growth and decay in every living creature, and it governs all patterns of animal and human migration. As we have seen, all distrust concerning the timing of life manifests in human nature through the 5th shadow of impatience. This impatience is one of the greatest causes of disease on the planet, for it will undermine your health and well-being and cut you off from the very heartbeat of life. In a certain light, impatience can be viewed by human beings as a positive trait, since it can goad you into action instead of remaining complacent. This is a mistaken impression, since impatience is rooted in agitation, and all action arising from agitation is out of harmony with the whole. There is a vast difference between acting out of impatience and acting out of resolve. Impatience is not a natural feature of human character. Rather, it is the result of a loss of your natural rhythm at a biological level. If you are feeling impatient, your breathing has become shallow and your nervous system is overactivated. Your core feeling is that all is not as it should be. Of course, this feeling is absolutely untrue. Everything is always exactly as it should be. What has happened is that you have fallen out of your natural state, the state of trust. Impatience is always rooted in the mind and as such is unique to human beings because of the unusual nature of our neocortex, which processes information in such a way that we perceive everything as happening in time, with a past, a present, and a future. The only way to escape impatience is to escape the mind and its realm of time, which is precisely what happens at the higher frequencies of this gene key. There is so much you can learn about the 64 shadow archetypes by looking at them through their harmonic pairings. Psychologically, you can find the root of all human issues and complexes within the 32 shadow pairings. And I'm so sorry, it is incredibly windy, so if that microphone is picking up on the wind, I do apologize. Each of the shadow pairings is literally set up to create obsessive patterns. The programming partner of the fifth shadow of impatience is the 35th shadow of hunger. These two states literally feed on each other. The hunger to escape the feeling of insecurity leads to impatience and vice versa, and it is all driven by the fear of time running out. In the modern world, you can really feel this deep-seated fear rippling through humanity. We have forgotten that life itself sets the pattern of evolution, and that we are merely the agents of those patterns. From time to time, both in our personal lives and at a collective level, natural mutations occur when the stability of life is overturned. If you can enter deeply into the spirit of such times, you will come to realize that nothing is really out of balance, and that all will reveal itself in time. Because the fifth gene key connects all life forms into a wider pattern, you have to learn to realize that nothing happens by chance. Everything is connected to everything else. So when you find yourself moving through a difficult period, it means that all life is moving through a difficult period. The themes that punctuate your daily life are universal themes that are lived out by all humans and all creatures simultaneously. If you look at the state of the mass consciousness on our planet today, you will see a universal mutation underway. Our entire species is undergoing a deep genetic quantum leap. As you come to terms with your personal fears, humanity comes to terms with its collective fears. The very fact that you are reading this right now is telling you that life is examining itself in enormous depth. And in doing so, it is discovering all manner of anomalies or glitches in its programming matrix. As each glitch is observed, it is deleted, and as each fear is accepted, it diminishes. Beneath the old genetic code, a new one is thus revealing itself. In summary, the fifth shadow of impatience is nothing more than a low-frequency human response to a particular set of environmental conditions. Like all the shadows, it is simply a matter of perception and attitude. Time always moves according to your perception or mood. If your breathing is calm, rhythmical, and deep, then time appears to dissolve. At the highest frequencies of this fifth gene key, you do not even notice time. The more you become aware of your own impatience and restlessness, the deeper you begin to sink into your true center and the less you are concerned with time and timing. This is the birth of a higher frequency, and that frequency is what we call patience. This fifth gene key contains the most beautiful of equations. Acceptance equals patience because the deeper you enter into your fears, the more patient you become. Repressive nature, pessimistic. It is interesting to consider that pessimism is really rooted in impatience. One of the key features of all repressive natures is collapse. If you have a repressive nature, then you have at some level moved through some kind of energetic collapse. When impatience drives a person to give up on life, it manifests as pessimism. Pessimism is nothing but the vestige of a complete loss of rhythm in one's life. It is an expression of a deep-seated fear that nothing can or will ever get better. Pessimism pulls one into a downward spiral, feeding on itself over and over until it finally ends in crisis or some kind of psychological and/or nervous collapse. If a person has been swept into pessimism, there is nothing proactive they can do to break free. As their friend or an observer, you must trust that life will create a crisis for them, because eventually it will. Only such a breakdown or breakthrough has enough energy to snap them out of their pattern. Reactive nature, pushy. The anger-based version of pessimism is pushiness. This is simply a different type of nervous system, and it reacts to impatience in an extroverted manner rather than collapsing inwards. Pushy people are constantly trying to force life's flow. They push others around, becoming touchy and aggravated, and can suddenly lash out for no apparent reason. These people also tend to manifest very inharmonious situations where natural timing is out of synchronization and nothing seems easy, as though life were deliberately blocking one's path. Even so, these kinds of natures stubbornly push on, making the situation worse and worse until something or someone has to snap in order to release the pressure. You can see how resistance to the natural patterns of life eventually brings one to a turning point, both in the repressed or reactive natures. At such turning points, the only decision is really, do I want to begin living again? Whatever a person decides, it must be respected as a part of the wider pattern of life. The fifth gift, patience. The library of light. The antidote to impatience is patience. This may sound like a very obvious truth, but it is actually rather profound. The ironic thing about patience, though, is that it takes patience to learn patience, and patience can indeed be learned. It is a self-proving gift. In other words, the more patient you become, the more you learn that patience always pays off, and thus the easier and more natural it becomes to wait. However, patience is not the same thing as waiting. You can wait both patiently or impatiently. Patience is the natural ground of your being, whereas impatience arises out of fear and conditioning. Patience is about trust. These two words have very similar meanings. If you trust in life, you will trust life in every moment, even the challenging moments. And in so doing so, you will always remain in the flow. As you live your life, you may notice many rhythms all around you, and it is the underlying presence of these rhythms that make you feel stable. The most obvious annual rhythm can be seen in the shifting of the 4 seasons. If you are inwardly quiet, the passage of the seasons will make a very powerful impression within your psyche. It tells us some very deep truths. That spring always follows winter, for example. In your daily life, you will experience periods of winter where resources may be scarce, where you may feel lost for a while, or when you simply feel melancholy for no apparent reason. Such stages are built into life, and if you are patient, they change of their own accord, and they always reveal some magic. As a vital element of the chemical family known as the ring of light, this fifth gene key plays a profound role within your genetics. Coding for an amino acid known as threonine, it determines the blueprint for how your individual cells trap light and convert it into energy. Through the magnetism of your living aura, you draw in or limit the frequencies of life deep into the cellular structure of your body. If you live your life out of fear, magnetically speaking, you limit the amount of light that touches your DNA. The more open-hearted you are, the more you magnetize higher frequencies into the very same DNA. It is only at certain frequencies that particular codes can be activated. When you are in love, for example, you will always experience higher codes within your DNA awakening. Time will pass differently, almost as if you were in a timeless bubble. Anyone who has been in love can recognize or remember this kind of experience. The fifth gift of patience is a far greater gift than it may sound. Patience, when really experienced deep within the body, leads to the opening of your heart and the consequent turning on of a higher code within your DNA. Your DNA is a library of consciousness that is completely dependent on the frequencies of light. The body is designed to awaken to these higher frequencies, which is why humanity really only seeks one thing: to live in the state of love. The more you are able to settle into a deep trust and patience with the rhythm of your own life, the more your heart will open and the softer and more yielding you will become in your attitude to everything and everyone that comes your way. You will begin to discover a higher functioning of your DNA, a code within a code. This code is not dependent on anything or anyone outside you. The state of open-heartedness or of being in love is a completely natural human state. There are people in the world who live permanently in this state. Thank you so much for the like. The gifts that come to the patient person are not only inner quietness, but also integration. When you wait and allow life to reveal its natural rhythms, you also come to realize that life knows best. Hindsight shows you repeatedly that life is constructed of beautiful and perfect patterns, woven into wonderful tapestries, and that your individual life follows such cosmic patterns. If you know how to wait calmly, you will realize, thank you so much, you will realize that you are always a part of these wider patterns and that they actually support you at all times, even the most challenging times. Above all, the gift of patience allows you to hear life's music. It tunes you into the subtle metronome behind your life. It allows you to breathe deeply into your belly and never feel trapped by your outer life situation. Patience smooths rough edges, keeps your heart and mind open, and makes life seem simple and easy. When you become impatient, even for a moment, you have stopped listening and trusting in the greater life. For these reasons, it is patience that has always been the true gauge and measure of the greatness of a person's soul. The fifth city, timelessness. Hitting the speed of being. Since the discovery of DNA and the mapping of the human genome, a huge amount of energy has gone into trying to identify and locate genes that seem to have specific links to certain diseases and illnesses. Now that we humans have cracked the code of life, our goal is to try and use it to make our lives more secure, which is understandable. However, what the shadow frequency fails to realize is that just because you can read a code does not mean that you are bound by that code. For example, knowing a child's genetic predisposition to heart disease may well end up being a double-edged sword, because the very knowing increases the possibilities of its occurring. If the parents respond through fear, then the frequency is indeed strengthened. At the gift level of frequency, you have just learned that higher manifestations of your DNA also exist. To live an open-hearted life is to operate at peak health, and therefore to override any such genetic predispositions. However, there exists an even higher truth hiding here at the Siddhic frequency. It is that all codes can eventually be transcended, and are in fact designed to be transcended. This truth is momentous. What the shadow frequency views as a problem may actually be a higher genetic mutation waiting to be unlocked. Here at the highest Siddhic frequencies, codes can no longer be unlocked digitally, which means to say that the mind cannot comprehend them. Only the human spirit can unlock the deepest secrets in your DNA. It is here in the fifth city that the great secret known as enlightenment lies waiting. The highest code can only be awakened by the flood of high frequencies contained within the spectrum of light. This is why the ancients named the phenomenon of awakening enlightenment. The more you open yourself to higher frequencies of light, the more heightened the vibration becomes within your cellular DNA. Awakening usually occurs in a rhythmic or logarithmic manner. That is to say that the body is periodically flooded by higher Siddhic frequencies prior to full-blown enlightenment. The distance in time between such events decreases by approximately 1/2 every time it occurs. The body is readying itself for an experience that will alter its own functioning permanently. Every time you experience such an inflow of Siddhic high-frequency light, you move through an intense period of mutation in which any glitches in your genetic code are erased. This translates into experience as deep unconscious fears rising up to the surface of your awareness through the medium of your body. After such periods, your whole system must literally be rebooted. These times in your life can be very challenging, and you may well experience some disorientation. As it nears the Siddhic threshold, the frequency of your body will begin to approach the speed of light. It is only when your frequency hits the speed of light that time finally dissolves and pure being is experienced. This is the higher purpose hidden in all human DNA, to hit the speed of being. At the level of the fifth city, patience itself is completely transcended and something wonderful happens. You as a separate entity cease to exist. Impatience and patience are two ends of the same spectrum, and as such they are rooted in the existence of time. There is a fascinating lesson to be learned from the spectrum of consciousness, and patience is the only key that allows you to see this lesson. All beings in life are waiting. Life itself can be seen as a waiting for death. We each wait for the future to reach into us, and as it does, so we see what life has planned for us. Consciousness dances through our vehicles in unique archetypal patterns. Sometimes we may find ourselves struggling in a shadow state, whilst at others we feel a deep sense of peace. Our lives are like the candle flame flickering in the winds of duality. Impatience to patience, fear to trust, and back again endlessly. A Siddhic state is different from this. In the Siddhic state, you have jumped out of the game. You are not identified with the candle flame, even though it may go on flickering. You cannot talk in terms of patience or impatience, because you cannot talk in terms of time or identity. This is the meaning of the city of timelessness. Timelessness is the nature of consciousness itself. It is unborn and undying. Timelessness does not care whether the body is exhibiting patience or impatience. It simply is. Timelessness is thus the death of all fighting. Patience and impatience are not absolute states. They are the poles within life, experienced through human awareness. Only timelessness is an absolute state, a Siddhic state. The nature of the 64 cities can be seen very clearly through this fifth city. These are not glamorous states, even though the words may sound captivating. Most of the cities are actually very ordinary. They occur when the set of patterns that you call yourself finally experiences itself as nothing more than a set of patterns. At this point, consciousness sees itself and the awareness operating through you is never quite the same again, even though the patterns of your nature continue to run until you die. This great change occurs when the smaller self stops trying to interfere with the flickering of the candle flame of awareness from one state to another. In other words, when you stop trying to leave the shadow frequency, only then can the paradox happen, when there is no more fight left in you. This fifth city also shows up the problems of language. In this book, we talk about states in terms of frequency bands. A higher gift state is spoken of as having a higher frequency, and a shadow state is having a lower frequency. This language feeds the human evolutionary urge to achieve higher states. Because of this language, it may be assumed that a higher frequency is therefore your goal. Ironically, the Siddhic states cannot really be spoken of in terms of frequency at all, since frequency depends on oscillations of wave patterns within time. How then can we discuss timelessness, or indeed any of the other 63 cities? The answer is that we cannot, but we can still play within the language. This is the hidden lesson of the spectrum of consciousness. That is actually a fallacy because you cannot measure or divide consciousness. You may well be wondering by now whether there is any point in going on in this exploration of the 64 gene keys. Well, there is and there isn't. One thing is true to say. The more deeply your mind grasps the fact that you cannot do anything in life, the more you must begin to surrender both to your smaller genetic nature and your greater galactic nature. In the end, only timelessness will tell. So what I love about the Gene Keys in human design is that it's talking about polarities. It's talking about things that these states of being that we all are capable of experiencing and manifesting. And that's why I love educating people and reading from this text, because it is so important to understand these acidic frequencies. Affirmations. My routines and habits are necessary to help me direct my life force. I give myself time and room for my daily rhythm, and I honor myself enough to honor my special rituals. They keep me grounded and connected to Source. And these are questions that you can ponder on your own. Do you have a daily rhythm? What do you need to do each day to honor yourself, Source, and the world around you? Are you getting enough time outside? What do you need to do to reconnect with the natural world? And so often in times, what we're doing is we're staying inside, we're not going outside, we aren't experiencing nature in its truest essence, in its truest form. That's why I love doing my videos from the porch that's enclosed, because there's enough sun, there's enough light, there's real air coming through, and it just makes you feel better overall. Thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and or join. And at the subscription level, things are popping off. I am so glad that you were here with me today, and I will see you on the next video or live stream. Be well, stay wild as well.